Hello, everyone, and welcome to Before the Green. This is some version of season 3, episode 21. I, as well as Corey and Donnie, are both so sorry that this is coming to you so late in the week. We generally pride ourselves on being consistent throughout the season and hopefully providing you with great content. However, some things went wrong this week, and essentially we lost the episode. Our quality control has been significantly improved this year to the point that we haven't had to redo or miss a single episode through the first 20 episodes of this season. But unfortunately, this week, due to technology issue outside of our control, that episode was lost. And unfortunately, due to all of our individual schedules, we weren't able to find a time to get back together and record. So this week, it's just going to be me. I'm going to give you a quick rundown on some of the topics we discussed on Monday evening when we recorded that original episode. And I'll give you a few thoughts on each topic, just expand a little bit. For what it's worth, I am feeling a bit under the weather today, as I have been the past couple days. So if none of this is overly clear, my bad, I guess. All right, let's just jump right into it. We'll clear this up as best we can and give you some content for the week. Two big stories occurred last week before the start of the race. The first of which was Gene Haas announcing that he would be retaining one charter and starting a new team known simply as Haas Factory Team. Not only would they be retaining one Cup charter, but they'd be continuing essentially with the two-car Xfinity team as well. It's important to note that currently they are the defending champions, since Cole Custer did win that championship in 2023. So while this kind of throws a wrench into many silly season predictions, not productions. I am very sorry. It throws a wrench in many silly season predictions. It's also thrown a wrench in some of the things which we had kind of known up to this point. And specifically what I'm referencing there is that Front Row is going to be moving into the SHR building. Front Row, it appears, is still going to be purchasing one of those charters. I believe that's a done deal at this point. But they were planning to move into that SHR building. With their three-car team would have been much more suited than what they have now. So that's no longer the plan. So while this is very much still a developing story, it'll be interesting to see who Haas plans to retain as staff and drivers, as well as which manufacturer they'll align with, which organizations they may attempt to strike an alliance with, as far as like a technological alliance of some sort, plus a myriad of other factors. There's so much that goes into that, and I don't think Gene Haas is completely prone to. Let's put it this way: Gene Haas runs his F1 team without factory support, so I don't think he's necessarily scared to run his NASCAR team that way. I think NASCAR, you can probably be much more competitive without factory support than you can with F1 theoretically, but at the same point, it's still paramount if you plan to win that you have factory support, that you have those alliances in place. So I think it'll be really important to see how this transpires going forward. Still very much a developing story. So we've we've got a lot that we're going to learn on this one going forward still, I'm sure. But for now, it really just kind of took silly season and turned it into crazy season. And that's kind of where we're at. Now, continuing on, a second story that relates to, as I think I'm going to start calling it from here on out, crazy season. The other major story that occurred before the race week had really kicked off was during a media event with Christopher Bell. He made a rather substantial error, and made the remark, "When Chase gets in the car," which was immediately taken as a clear indicator that a deal had been done between Joe Gibbs Racing and Chase Briscoe. While this had been the presumed outcome since Martin Truex Jr. announced that he would be retiring, this really solidified the information and that it had been accurate. So following the race on Sunday, JGR announced that there would be a press conference on Tuesday, and it was confirmed that Chase Briscoe would, in fact, be the new driver of the number 19 Toyota going forward. It appears that'll have some sponsorship from Bass Pro Shops, as well as probably some others. And also, they made Christopher Bell kind of make the announcement. So, if you want to announce some things, I guess there's somewhat of a punishment involved. It appeared lighthearted. I'm not sure how lighthearted the meeting probably went when it initially was occurred and he broke that news, but nonetheless, That's a really good outcome for Chase Briscoe. I think that's a good opportunity for him. I think it's a great opportunity for Joe Gibbs Racing as well to put a guy in the seat that um, has lots of talent. Admittedly, the last few seasons, the first seasons of his Cup career aren't what he's wanted. I'm sure. I'm sure he wants and expects better, and I have no doubt that Joe Gibbs also probably expects better, and I think we'll see that out of Chase. I think it'll be a matter of confidence coming back. So it's a really interesting pickup. For those of you that did watch the lockup episode 1, the day that Truex announced his retirement, you'll notice that I was very much wrong about why I believe they'd be bringing the number 18 car back there. In fact, apparently sticking with the number 19. So um, just goes to show you I get things wrong all the time. Don't be surprised if I have some more wrong. Probably down in our picks section. So we'll get to that shortly too. As for the racing in Loudon, there was nothing particularly dramatic for the first portion of the day. NASCAR did move the start a half hour earlier, which, although I'll admit I kind of mocked at the point because, what's a half hour gain you? But actually, it ended up being great as it allowed them to complete all the laps of the race, even after a substantial rain delay. We were getting very close to having to shut it down early because of darkness, which we've seen in the past at Loudon, not that long ago, actually. I want to say it was 22, maybe 21, where the race had to be called short because of darkness. And NASCAR moving the race ahead that half hour actually, I think, is probably what made the difference there. The story of the day ended up being the fact that NASCAR would restart the race for the first time in history, I will add, on the wet weather tires. The race became quite dramatic at that point, of course. Lots of cautions, no grip. Christopher Bell obviously had the fastest car throughout much of the day, but even in those conditions, he did. I think the only person who really had a shot at him was Josh Berry, but on the last restart, that was kind of a non-factor as well. We did end up having, on Monday when we recorded this, we did have some rather heated discussion about the actions of some of the drivers, particularly Michael McDowell, and whether their actions during the restarts were warranted. We also discussed whether they were necessary and the legitimacy of those moves. So we did have quite a bit of conversation about that. Long story short, a lot of people, I won't say which two, but they believed that perhaps it was a bit aggressive. No, I'm just kidding. We all agreed that McDowell's move was aggressive. Some of us were just a little more understanding as to how a man in that position could see that maybe it was, worth trying. So there was that. But overall, it was a great race. Ended with lots of drama. The only real controversy ended up being, NASCAR's heavy-handedness in regards to strategy. We didn't really see any strategy play out between, who's going to take the wet weathers off and put on the slicks first, or anything of that nature, which I think did rob us a little bit of the drama. We didn't get to see any strategy play out. It was simply, throw them on and let's see what happens. NASCAR did mandate certain times that they had to change tires and things like that. So there was a little bit of controversy regarding that, but nothing too serious. It didn't take away from the overall product. It just, it was what it was. The race did end with Christopher Bell taking the checkered flag. So we also finished out the day talking about how the 20 team was looking as we head towards the playoffs. And honestly, with resounding consensus, I believe, we all agree that if the 20 car and the 20 team can clean up their inconsistencies a bit and stop making such costly errors when they do make an error, they are a true threat to win the championship at the end of the season, especially if you look at the places where Christopher Bell has been able to win this year, primarily short 1 mile or less flat tracks. It's kind of been his jam. So that would scream some serious alarms to me if I was another team heading into Phoenix, if he's able to make the Final Four. Looking ahead to Nashville, we turn the corner and start heading there for the Ally 400. We now have a 3-way tie amongst all 3 of us hosts, myself, Korey, and Donnie. For the points lead in our weekly points segment, we all have 8 points each. Korey was able to snag a win in Loudon with Martin Truex Jr., who finished in 9th. beating out my pick of Bubba Wallace and Donnie's pick of Brad Keselowski, who finished 34th and 28th, respectively, meaning Korey would get to pick first, followed by Donnie and then myself for this week's upcoming race in Nashville. So for Nashville, Korey has chosen Kyle Larson. Donnie has taken William Byron, and I, picking last, was able to pick Ross Chastain. I'm the only guy who had him left. He is the best running average position over the past 2 years at this track, the only 2 years that we've run here. So it's not a lot of data points to go on, but I think we've got an interesting race between these three particular drivers. Two really big names for those guys that I'm sure they both want to get points with. Those are the kind of guys that you can't afford to let slip. So I've gotten points with both of them, so I'm sure they're looking to do the same. Looking forward to next week's podcast episode, which will be episode 22. We'll be talking about all things related to the race in Nashville, plus what we're looking forward to and who our picks are for the Chicago race on that street course. Chances are we'll also be having some thoughts and input on the story that broke late this week about an altercation between Bubba Wallace and Eric Almirola that resulted in a suspension for the Joe Gibbs Racing driver. Lots of rumors out there. Doesn't seem to be a lot of foundational evidence as far as really anyone that knows what happened saying much. But I'm sure we'll have some thoughts here on the podcast. So make sure to check out episode 21 next week to be kept in the loop. Until next time, I'm Evan Locke. My regular co-hosts are Donnie Johnston and Korey MacArthur. And this is Before the Green.